Resilience in the face of adversity. Hank acknowledged his wrongdoing, confessing that he had been a negative influence. His intention was to isolate Liberty from society, leaving her financially vulnerable. Comparatively, Liberty exhibited remarkable courage. She made the difficult decision to sever ties with Hank. She refused to compromise for the sake of their child. While divorce could have its adverse effects, it was preferable to enduring constant conflict in a strained marriage. Mrs. Lane served Hank a plate of eggs and bacon, snapping him back from his reverie about his life with Jessica. Presently content with Jessica, Hank ate his breakfast contemplatively, sharing some with Sonny. However, the boy insisted on using his own fork, expressing his disdain for sharing utensils. As the morning rush subsided, Liberty and Mrs. Lane found a moment to rest. Meanwhile, Hank and Sonny continued to eat slowly. Liberty cleaned up the cafe, refraining from interrupting their father-son time. The presence of innocent children should not be tainted by their parents' disputes. A sudden entrance caught their attention. The door swung open, revealing Jessica. Both Liberty and Mrs. Lane observed her entrance cautiously, ready to intervene if necessary. Surprisingly, Jessica seemed more composed, addressing Liberty while seeking out Hank. Stating her purpose, Jessica directed her attention to Hank, who was enjoying a peaceful meal with his son. Although taken aback by her presence, he dropped his fork in shock upon hearing his wife's voice. Despite the disruption, he cherished the breakfast and the Hunt sisters' culinary prowess. Serenity had managed all the household chores when she lived in his home before. "Jessica, I just came here for breakfast." Hank picked up the fallen fork and disposed of it in the trash under the table. He stood up and reassured Jessica that he was only here to have breakfast. Jessica's gaze shifted to Sonny. In return, Sonny looked at her with his bright, clear eyes, a reflection of Liberty's features. Despite his mother's aura, he appeared as an adorable child. Yet, Jessica struggled to maintain her composure. She couldn't bear to keep looking at him. Hank swiftly explained, "Liberty was really busy earlier, and no one was around to watch Sonny. So, I let him sit next to me while I ate and looked after him. After all, Sonny is still my son." He was aware of Jessica's aversion to the constant mentions of Sonny by his family. She despised their visits and conversations about him. Her in-laws often proclaimed Sonny as their treasured grandson, the one who would continue the family legacy. While Hank hadn't treated his son so devotedly before, now he visited Sonny often. Jessica's concern was that this might reignite the relationship between Hank and Liberty. Moreover, her mother-in-law incessantly urged Hank to abandon her and pursue Liberty anew. She was perplexed about something else as well. Even though she'd been intimate with Hank for several months, she hadn't become pregnant yet. Anxiety gnawed at her, perhaps something was wrong with her health. If she became pregnant, she hoped his family might treat her with more respect. "Not blaming you, Hank, but just inform me next time you plan to come here for breakfast. I haven't had Liberty's cooking in a long while. You used to bring it to the office for me to eat." Liberty halted her table-wiping motions, realization dawning upon her. Back then, she used to pack breakfast for Hank, worried he might go hungry after waking up late. Little did she know, he was sharing the food with Jessica. The credit for winning over Jessica might largely belong to the breakfast made by Liberty and Serenity. Hank offered an embarrassed smile. "I'll remember to call next time." Then, he reached for Jessica's hand, asking tenderly, "Honey, have you eaten? Should I order something for you?" "I've eaten. You're done here, right? Let's go. Our house is still undergoing renovations. You should come and take a look. You can't leave everything to me." Jessica withdrew her hand and turned to leave after speaking. Hank followed closely behind. Arriving at his car, Jessica waited while Hank opened the passenger door. She settled in, fastened her seatbelt, and as Hank began to drive, she adopted a gentler tone. "Hank, if you want to see Sunny, just do it openly. If you tell me beforehand, I won't stop you from visiting your son. You don't have to do it behind my back. In fact, I can accompany you when you see Sunny. Even though I didn't give birth to him, he's adorable, and I've grown fond of him. I don't have my own child yet, so I'm willing to join you as you bond with Sunny, so he doesn't forget you're his father. If Liberty agrees, you can even bring Sunny to our home for a few days so your parents can spend time with their grandson." Hank was taken aback. Why was Jessica acting so understanding today? Hank shot Jessica a sidelong glance, playfully remarking, "Jessica, did the sun rise from the west today?" "I went to Liberty's diner early this morning for breakfast and to be with Sunny. When I spotted you, I worried you might start a quarrel and embarrass me in front of Liberty. Little did I expect that you'd be open to having Sunny stay with us for a few days. You treated Lucas poorly, so I thought you disliked children." Jessica held a grudge against Lucas for destroying her cosmetics. However, since Lucas was Chelsea's son, and Chelsea and Hank's relationship remained intact, they continued to meet up. Despite her aversion to the boy, the most Jessica could do was lock their bedroom to prevent Lucas from entering. Lucas would create a mess, but his grandparents paid it no mind, allowing the young troublemaker free rein. Jessica understood that Chelsea's 3 children were primarily raised by her parents-in-law, who treated them better than they treated Sunny. Jessica refrained from commenting on her in-laws' indulgence, but after Lucas left, her mother-in-law consistently urged her to tidy up. Jessica refused, suggesting that if her mother-in-law disliked the mess, she should handle the cleaning herself. Jessica's in-laws eventually took on the task. After experiencing the hassle of cleaning, they curbed Lucas's destructive behavior during his visits. Throughout her struggles with her in-laws, Jessica learned that she needed to be more resolute than they were. As long as she held Hank's affections and secured his support, victory was hers. "I don't despise children. I dislike spoiled brats. I don't mind cute and well-behaved children like Sunny. Although I can't say I'm fond of him either, considering he's Liberty and your son. Liberty is my rival in love." Hank countered, "She's not your love rival anymore. We're divorced now. Neither of you plans to remarry, but your family won't let go. They always praise Liberty while belittling me. Don't think I'm oblivious, I'm aware of their actions behind my back. I know it all." Hank hastened to reassure her, "Jessica, we're committed for life. As long as our feelings remain strong, it doesn't matter what my parents say. They simply want to please Liberty due to her affluent aunt and her sister's marriage into wealth. If Liberty and her sister were still the same as before, I'm sure my mother would have approached them to show off our happiness. If Serenity hadn't married Mr. York, we'd still have our jobs and a comfortable income. We own a house, cars, and savings. We're in a better position than many others." Jessica grumbled, "It's good that you realize that. I worry that you might change your perception of me after hearing your mother's comments." "I won't." Hank pondered his recent divorce and remarriage. He couldn't afford another divorce, the repercussions were too significant. "Sunny is still your own flesh and blood. He's your parents' grandson. Bringing him over for a few days every now and then could liven up our home. Your parents would likely be happier, nitpick me less, and our family could enjoy greater harmony. It's beneficial for our family's happiness. I'm not one to hold grudges. At the end of the day, you're Sunny's father, and you have to contribute to his upbringing. It's important to maintain a strong bond with him. Otherwise, it would be a waste for him to not be close to you, despite growing up with your financial support. We've been together for quite a while, but I haven't become pregnant yet. Perhaps having Sunny around more could make a difference. Many couples struggle with infertility for years until they adopt a child, and then they end up conceiving one of their own within a year or two. Hank was elated by this perspective and commended her, saying, "Jessica, I was right about you. You're a wise and sensible wife and mother. What woman doesn't envision a better life when she marries? I was pushed to become sharp-tongued due to your family's treatment. Your sister, in particular, is a troublemaker. She meddled in your relationship with Liberty, and now she's trying to stir up our lives. Hank, I'm not trying to create discord, but I'm speaking the truth. Think about it. Isn't your sister manipulative? Everything she does seems to harm others. She obviously has substantial savings but came to us to borrow over $100 grand. Lending money to someone like your sister is akin to feeding meat to a lion. You'll never get it back." Jessica openly criticized Chelsea in front of Hank. She dared to mention that Liberty had also complained about Chelsea to Hank in the past, but Hank had sided with his sister. After a brief silence, Hank responded, "Chelsea. I told her not to visit our house unless it's for special occasions. She mentioned that she wants to add her first 2 children to our household registration so they can conveniently attend Wilkespoonwood High, right? Hank, don't be naive and agree to her request. It's easier to invite trouble than to remove it. If you add them to our household registration, they'll be considered part of our family. They'll have a claim to the family's assets in the future. My sister just wants to shift the children to our registration for better schooling. They won't have a stake in our family's property. I'm only adding your name to the title deed. They won't have a claim if their names aren't included." Jessica's expression darkened. "I don't care. You can't agree. They're Chelsea's children, not your responsibility. If you do agree, can you ignore them for the next 3 years? Moreover, if you're harsh with them, they'll resent you because they're not your own. If you don't care about them, they'll still resent you. It's a no-win situation, agreeing would be foolish." Liberty had also rejected this proposal in the past. Chelsea recently brought it up to Hank again due to her eldest daughter's impending graduation from elementary school in July. "If you're solely focused on Sunny, I won't object. It's your duty as a father. But if you abandon your son and choose to care for your niece and nephew instead, where does that leave your sister and brother-in-law?" Hank responded, "Jessica, it was just an idea Chelsea raised. I didn't agree. Rest assured, I'll decline it regardless. Don't worry." "When will my name be added to the title deed?" "Tomorrow. We'll take care of it tomorrow, alright?" In his thoughts, Hank realized, it seems that Jessica is just like Liberty. They both declined to look after my nephew and niece, even though they wanted to attend Wilkespoonwood School. Wisely, Jessica decided to change the subject. Despite Chelsea's faults, she was still Hank's sister, making it difficult for Hank to sever ties completely. Jessica had made her stance clear. Her goal was to bring Hank closer to Sunny and break down Liberty's resistance. Over time, Jessica anticipated that Liberty would become more accepting of them taking Sunny out to spend time together. This would allow her to fulfill the task assigned to her by the mysterious woman who had approached her. Jessica didn't view herself as heartless, her family's well-being was at stake. Her mission was to bring Sunny to a crowded place, creating an opportunity for the other party to strike. As long as Sunny behaved, he would be safe. If anyone deserved blame, it was Serenity, who had drawn the woman's ire. The woman claimed that she was using Sunny as bait to lure out Serenity, the real target of her vendetta. Spring Blossoms opened its doors earlier than most. Camryn had arrived via public transport, expertly navigating her familiar route. She was virtually invisible in the Newman household, a state she'd grown accustomed to. Although she hadn't been present, she had overheard the dramatic events at the Newman villa last night. Her reckless sister's arrest prompted her mother's frantic cries and calls to her uncle for immediate assistance. Camryn wasn't entirely sure of Carrie's actions, but her run-in with the police indicated wrongdoing. Camryn had anticipated that Carrie's recklessness would lead to trouble sooner or later. The spoiled upbringing Carrie had received from her parents had bred a fearless nature within her. And as expected, that nature had led to consequences. The 2 employees Camryn had hired were not yet on the premises, they typically arrived around 9 o'clock. For now, she was alone in the store. She took the opportunity to move potted flowers to the entrance. Amid her rearranging, she abruptly halted as a man entered the store. He stood so close that she could catch the scent of his cologne, a stranger who had never patronized her flower shop before. "Are you here to purchase flowers, sir?" Camryn inquired, offering a friendly smile to the man who trailed behind her. Standing before her was Callum, who couldn't resist meeting Camryn in person. His brother and sister-in-law's affectionate display had ignited a spark of envy within him. Observing Zachary's transformation after meeting Serenity, Callum yearned for a connection like theirs and considered meeting the potential wife his grandmother had suggested. "Beyond flowers, what else do you offer in your store?" Callum questioned Camryn. With a maintained smile, Camryn responded, "I also offer flower pots, flower fertilizers, potting soil, and related products. What can I assist you with today, sir?" Callum's lips tightened. The woman before him sported a perpetual smile, yet an elusive air surrounded her. However, her words were pointed. "I'll just browse," Callum replied, his uncertainty evident. He proceeded past Camryn and entered the store, allowing curiosity to guide his exploration. After completing a circuit, he noticed that Camryn was trailing closely behind him. The notion of her pretending to be blind flashed through his mind. Was she unmasking herself? "Sir?" Camryn's voice reached Callum when his steps became inaudible. Observing her expression, Callum felt his uncertainty intensify. Was her blindness real, or was it all an act? Determined to assess the truth, Callum decided to test her. After scanning the store, his attention settled on a potted cactus. Plucking the pot from its perch, he placed it on the counter and inquired, "I'd like to purchase this. What's the cost?" Camryn pivoted toward the direction of his voice and moved closer. "Which pot have you chosen, sir? Could you indicate where it was originally located?" "I cannot see," he. Callum's gaze fixed on her eyes. Devoid of black sunglasses, her eyes were clearly visible. Their size and shape were captivating, though the lack of focus underscored her blindness. "You cannot see. Yet you managed to follow me earlier?" Camryn extracted a glasses case from her pocket, unveiled a pair of sunglasses, and donned them. "My hearing is quite acute, allowing me to discern subtle movements. I followed your steps by sound." Callum acknowledged the reputation that blind individuals often possessed keen hearing. "I selected a pot at random and didn't take note of its position. You're familiar with the layout of your store. Can't you employ your sense of touch to identify the pot I've chosen?" Doubt lingered in his mind regarding his grandmother's selection of a blind woman for him. He was inclined to test her authenticity. "I placed the pot on your checkout counter." Camryn maintained her silence, advancing to the counter and extending her hand to touch the pot. As her fingers grazed the cactus's spines, she instinctively recoiled. Callum observed the entire interaction, noting her interaction with the cactus. She indeed appeared as a blind person who relied on touch. "Sir, the cactus you've chosen has thorns," Camryn confirmed, attempting another touch. This time, she gingerly explored the pot's dimensions, providing her assessment. "The cactus is larger and is priced at $45. That's rather steep. How about a smaller one, something suitable for a desk?" "Our smaller options range from $10 to $20. If you're aiming for a desk placement, I'd recommend the $16 variant." As she spoke, Camryn gradually navigated to a plant stand, feeling for a compact cactus pot, which she subsequently handed to Callum. Callum's initial intention was to gauge Camryn's authenticity. From his assessment, she did indeed appear to be blind. Considering there would be ample future opportunities to test her further, Callum opted to halt his current experiment, simply stating, "Very well, I'll take it." Callum retrieved his phone, only to discover that there were no options for cashless payments available at the counter. He inquired, "Does your store accept e-wallet payments?" Camryn answered candidly, "Due to my visual impairment, I haven't set up cashless payment options. I don't possess an e-wallet account." She presented her phone to Callum, revealing an old-fashioned model with a keypad. The phone was limited to calls and messages, she was unable to operate a smartphone. "I've posted a notice at the entrance, indicating that we solely accept cash. If you lack cash and my assistants are on site, you can use Apple Pay with them, and they'll reimburse me in cash." Callum refrained from disclosing the note's denomination, $100. He scrutinized her as she touched the money. After a few exploratory touches, she approached the counter, unlocked a drawer, and began sorting through its compartments. Standing close, Callum noticed the distinct sections within the drawer, each containing varying denominations of money. Camryn exhibited impressive precision in providing change, handing him $84. "Feel free to return whenever you require anything else." Accepting the money, Callum counted it, no errors were present. He returned the cash to his wallet and requested, "Could I have a business card?" "I'll take one. The next time I need to purchase flowers, I'll give you a call, and you can arrange for delivery. It'll save me the trouble of visiting since my schedule is quite packed." "Of course, sir. Allow me a moment." Camryn procured a business card from a small container on the counter and extended it to Callum. He accepted it, briefly examining the card before slipping it into his pants pocket. Retrieving his cactus pot, he announced, "I'll be on my way." "Have a pleasant day, sir." Camryn accompanied Callum to the exit. Although he glanced her way twice, he remained silent, proceeding to his parked car and driving off. With Callum's departure, Camryn's two assistants arrived. Together, they repositioned potted plants and ensured their proper arrangement. One assistant inquired, "Why is this cactus here?" as she held up the cactus pot from the counter. "A customer came earlier and purchased the cactus," Camryn explained. He intended to place it on his desk but found the larger one unsuitable. Camryn omitted Callum's testing motives from her account. He hadn't visited to buy flowers, rather, he deliberately purchased a small cactus pot as a means to assess her. The assistant hummed an acknowledgement, and Camryn refrained from offering further details. As her assistants undertook tasks like cleaning and watering, Camryn returned to her register. Shortly thereafter, Callum arrived back at York Corporation. Clutching the small cactus pot, he exited his car and entered the office building. Zachary had just arrived, having dropped his wife at the bookstore prior to heading to the office slightly later than usual. "Zachary," Callum called out to him. Zachary emitted a soft hum in acknowledgement. Observing Callum holding a cactus, he inquired, "Is that your purchase?" "Yes, I stopped by Spring Blossoms before work," Callum confirmed. Spring Blossoms? Zachary found the name vaguely familiar, possibly mentioned by his wife in passing. Callum opted for candor, stating, "It's the flower shop owned by Ms. Camryn. The store's name isn't exactly imaginative." Zachary mused, "Flowers usually bloom in spring." Callum experienced a moment of surprise. "You got it." Zachary offered a brief comment, "Since you made the trip there, why not purchase more potted plants?" Callum gave a slight pout. "I didn't go there to buy flowers. I got this cactus as a sort of compensation since I accidentally caused her to prick her hand." Zachary recommended, "A spherical cactus might complement your desk. Regular cacti tend to have longer thorns. Just be cautious not to get pricked." With those casual remarks, Zachary proceeded into the office building, leaving Callum behind as he headed upstairs. Callum suspected Zachary might have figured out the motive behind his choice. That's probably why he suggested the spherical cactus. A few minutes later, Callum found himself seated at his desk, his attention focused on the cactus. He retrieved Camryn's business card from his pocket and dialed her number using his office phone. When Camryn answered, he inquired, "Ms. Newman, do you remember me?" Camryn possessed an excellent memory and replied with a smile, "Are you the gentleman who purchased the cactus earlier?" "Yes, I suppose you do," Callum chuckled. Camryn's inner thoughts whispered, "Of course I remember you, you're the one who made me prick myself with a cactus." Yet, she maintained her pleasant demeanor. Camryn found herself considerably surprised by this revelation. He was associated with York Corporation. The question of whether he was an employee or a member of the York family lingered in her mind, uncertain. She mused, "I'll have to ask Serenity about the owner of that number the next time she visits the store for flowers." Serenity remained blissfully unaware of Callum's interest in Camryn. Following her arrival at the bookstore after being chauffeured by Zachary, she engaged in a conversation with Jasmine. The former classmates she had invited to help create handicrafts had come by. She instructed them in crafting small trinkets, assessing their abilities and distributing materials for them to work on. Upon seeing them off, Serenity planned to head back into the store when Elisa pulled up in her car. Watching Elisa park and exit the vehicle, Serenity greeted her, "Hey, Elisa. Were you coming to see me?" Elisa, smiling, approached Serenity. "You guessed it. I saw you were outside." Curiously surveying the surroundings, Elisa inquired, "Were those the classmates you brought in to help with your crafts?" Serenity confirmed, "Yep. Now I can relax a bit and earn some money with their assistance. By the way, there's a banquet scheduled for tonight." Recalling her past experience at the Dowling residence, Serenity noted, "I remember the last banquet I attended there. You and I upset Carrie while helping Camryn, and we ended up with quite a bit of trouble on our hands." Elisa's attention shifted to the two bodyguards stationed outside the bookstore. These two men seemed familiar. Amused, she continued, Did my cousin-in-law arrange them to watch over you, afraid someone might swoop you away? Serenity corrected with a laugh, no, he assigned them to safeguard me due to concerns about my safety. Elisa playfully entered the store alongside Serenity. You're now a part of the York family, so having a few bodyguards is only natural. Sometimes, I bring along a couple myself when I head out. Elisa, however, usually enjoyed her independence and relished the freedom of solitary outings. Upon Elisa's arrival, Jasmine fetched some fruits from the fridge, cleaned them, arranged them in a bowl, and served them to her guests. Elisa shifted the topic, addressing both girls. I came to discuss the agricultural fields. The talks went smoothly, and the village chiefs from various areas are on board with our proposal. They're planning a meeting to gauge everyone's opinions and negotiate prices. Once an agreement is reached, we can finalize the lease based on the land size. In Serenity's hometown and the neighboring villages, the younger generation tended to migrate to cities for employment, leaving the elderly to manage the farming. Given that the older folks couldn't handle the farm work well, the fields remained largely deserted. Thus, when presented with the prospect of leasing their fields to a well-off individual, they readily seized the opportunity for additional income. The news delighted both Serenity and Jasmine. Following Elisa's update on the investment project, she shifted her gaze to Serenity, pausing momentarily before broaching a more unsettling topic. Now, on to the less favorable news. Saren, I had someone look into your relatives' activities as we discussed land contracts. Serenity, anticipating unsavory developments, responded calmly, anything they're involved in tends to spell trouble. Just tell me, Elisa. I'm ready to hear whatever new mischievous scheme they've concocted. At most, they might have pilfered the bricks, sand, or gravel and sold them. Elisa, direct as ever, relayed, the construction materials you dispatched to rebuild the house are still untouched. They've been stored neatly and weren't tampered with. Your relatives didn't attempt to sell or remove them. Serenity remarked, it seems my little warning to Noah worked. Despite Noah not being a favored member of the family, he held some sway as the youngest among them. Acting on Serenity's instructions, he kept a watchful eye to prevent the Hunt family from making off with the materials. It was likely that Noah took Serenity's words to heart, motivated by a degree of apprehension. In the past, you mentioned your plans to file a lawsuit to reclaim your parents' house. Though your grandparents aren't well versed in legal matters, the younger generation among them enlightened them on the implications of a lawsuit. Your grandparents eventually grasped the gravity of the situation, understanding that they stood to gain little from pursuing legal action. Elisa continued, in response to their displeasure, they embarked on a campaign of rumors within the village. Their claims assert that you and Liberty are not biologically related to them, effectively questioning your entitlement to the family property on the grounds of non-biological ties. Jasmine was left speechless, her sympathy evident in her gaze towards Serenity. The level of malevolence emanating from Serenity's relatives was beyond measure, they seemed consumed by avarice. Serenity's initial shock morphed into derisive amusement. They're stooping that low, huh? Proposing that I'm not my father's biological daughter. I bear a strong resemblance to my father, and unless my dad wasn't biologically connected to them either, there's no way Liberty and I aren't their biological grandchildren. Other villagers also confirmed the likeness between you and your father, rendering it implausible that you're not his flesh and blood. They further attest to the strong bond your parents shared while alive, dismissing any notion of an affair. The culmination of their rumors paints your father as an adopted child. They assert that he was raised and supported in adulthood, and as a result, the property he left behind, namely the house, should revert to them, his supposed parents. Jasmine absorbed the details in a mixture of shock and disbelief. Serenity's relatives seemed ready to fabricate any tale that could boost their claim. Serenity sneered, clearly exasperated by their actions. Do they genuinely believe they can usurp my parents' legacy through these unfounded rumors? Perhaps that old man conveniently forgot that my father resembled him the most out of all his children. The others favored the grandmother. Serenity had reached a point of disillusionment, she couldn't even regard them as her grandparents any longer. Despite old Mr. Hunt's advanced age and altered appearance, the resemblance between him and Serenity remained due to her father's likeness to his own father. If he insists that my dad was adopted, how does he explain their shared features? Their determination to twist facts knows no bounds. They've even denied their own son. Do they assume they can evade accountability because my father is no longer here? In truth, these rumors would have minimal impact on the lawsuit's outcome. Whether or not Serenity and Liberty were biologically connected to their grandparents had no bearing on the verdict. Regardless of blood ties, Serenity and Liberty had been raised by their parents for a significant period. Even in the absence of biological kinship, a legally recognized adoptive relationship existed. In the end, their true status as their parents' biological children remained unchanged. The Hunt family's propagation of these rumors seemed geared towards leveraging morality to induce Serenity and Liberty to voluntarily relinquish their claim to their parents' bequest. Serenity maintained unwavering resolve as she declared, "No matter how many deceitful tactics they employ, we won't be swayed. We're resolute about pursuing justice through legal means, taking only what rightfully belongs to us." She may not be heartless, but when it came to her avaricious relatives, Serenity was prepared to show no mercy. The scars from her childhood ran deep, and it would take a lifetime to heal them. Absolutely, Elisa affirmed, echoing Serenity's sentiments. They can weave their tales and concoct their stories to their heart's content. We'll let the law decide, ensuring fairness prevails for both sides. Elisa's incredulity was palpable as she mused, "I've never encountered anyone more audacious and shameless than them. Are you absolutely certain your father shares their blood, Seren?" Serenity nodded resolutely. "I believe so. My father bore an uncanny resemblance to his father. It's just that they have their favorites. As is often the case with some parents, they lavish attention on the eldest and youngest while the middle child tends to be overlooked." She continued, "If they choose to contest my father's parentage in court, I'll request a DNA test to conclusively prove the blood ties. Refusal to undergo the test can only imply they're hiding something and lying." Modern medical technology had made DNA testing a precise method for establishing familial relationships. Any rumors propagated by old Mr. and Mrs. Hunt in their town would likely be met with skepticism. The townsfolk had been present during Serenity's father's birth, and their collective memory could not be so easily distorted. Serenity's mother, Lisa, also came under scrutiny due to the rumors, despite her being less known in her hometown. Nonetheless, the townspeople were aware of Lisa's adoptive status. As Elisa astutely observed, "They're spreading these rumors to manipulate you into thinking that you shouldn't stake a claim to the property since you are allegedly unrelated." Both Elisa and Jasmine shared a deep understanding of the Hunt family's skillful manipulation of facts. Elisa reassured them, "While our investment project is ongoing, I'll designate someone to act as our representative and oversee the project. Rest assured, I'll keep you updated promptly on any developments." Serenity expressed gratitude, but Elisa playfully deflected it. No need for formalities, Seren. We're best friends and cousins, much closer than that. Skip the pleasantries. You're using a different skincare product, aren't you? It doesn't seem like the brand I recommended. There's a distinct fragrance about you. Elisa was well versed in Serenity's usual skincare choices, but she'd overlooked this change until now. She redirected the conversation to prevent Serenity from excessive gratitude. Jasmine humorously confirmed, "Yes, I've noticed a different scent on you too. Are you using the skincare products Mr. York provided?" Serenity playfully retorted, "You speak as if Mr. Buchan doesn't pamper you. He's more attentive and romantic than my man. You could call mine a bit of a blockhead. He struggles to grasp subtlety and prefers explicit instructions. He gave me various collections of skincare products, insisting I use only the ones he selected. Quite domineering, isn't he? It's like he wants to take control of every aspect of my life." Elisa and Jasmine responded in unison, "You should count yourself lucky. He spoils you rotten, and here you are, complaining about it. You have no idea how fortunate you are." Zachary may not be the most eloquent when it came to romance, but his love and concern for Serenity were unmistakable. Elisa, more than anyone else, recognized the extent to which Zachary had transformed for Serenity's sake. There were probably numerous women in Wolfspoon harboring envy for Serenity's good fortune. Serenity responded with a playful smile, "I do realize how fortunate I am. I'll definitely count my blessings. Literally." Her close friends and family were quite easily charmed by Zachary, and they never missed an opportunity to sing his praises. After all, Zachary was exceptionally good to Serenity. Serenity's words about not knowing what gift to get for Zachary raised her friends' suspicions that she was subtly flaunting her relationship. Jasmine didn't seem too affected, given that Josh treated her well. However, Elisa, being single, couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy and jealousy. Elisa playfully suggested, "Zachary had everything but a wife back then. Now that he's married to you, he needs some little ones in his life. Hurry up and start a family, let's aim for twins, a boy and a girl." Elisa couldn't help but think of the adorable Sunny. She continued with enthusiasm, "If your kids are half as cute and clever as Sunny, Zachary can certainly afford to raise them." "Seren, if there's good news on the horizon, I must be the first to know. I want to prepare gifts for my future niece or nephew." Jasmine joined in teasing, "Don't worry, Elisa. If Seren's pregnant, she'd tell Mr. York first. Don't compete with him for the top spot, or he might get jealous and restrict Seren from hanging out with you." Elisa cheekily responded, "I used to be scared of Zachary, but now it seems he's scared of me. I am the older cousin, after all. Ha ha. It warms my heart every time I remember that Zachary ranks below me in the family." Serenity, known for her frankness, chimed in, "Well, he might just be scared off by you." Elisa was momentarily at a loss for words, but she soon regained her composure. Serenity clarified, "My Aunt Flo has just finished her monthly visit, so no baby news yet. But I do hope for a girl and a boy. By the way, Mr. Remy Johnson's sister-in-law is expecting twins, I believe. Her due date is approaching." Serenity had heard about it from Zachary, who had a touch of envy in his voice when mentioning Ben and his wife expecting twins. Serenity wasn't particularly familiar with the wealthiest family in Innerberg, but she knew a bit more about Remy. As Serenity spoke, her eyes were fixed on Elisa. Elisa, not reading too much into it, smiled and shared, "The renovation on Mr. Johnson's house has already begun. Mr. Johnson often stops by to check on the progress. I've invited him for tea if I run into him. I also heard that his sister-in-law is having twins. Apparently, his other sister-in-law already has twin boys. The Johnsons seem to be following the Yorks in having predominantly male offspring. Elisa then playfully added, Saren, if you have a daughter, you'll be the hero of the York family. They've been wishing for a girl for generations. While the Johnsons primarily had sons, it was only Ben's generation that lacked a girl. His father had a sister. The York family, on the other hand, hadn't seen a girl born into their ranks for generations. Serenity playfully responded, it's amusing how the pressure is always on women to bear sons. In my case, I'm under pressure to have a daughter. Nana keeps nagging about having a great-granddaughter and promises quite a handsome reward for it. Elisa chimed in, Grandma may mention that the push present for giving birth to a boy is $50 million, but it's $500 million for a girl. I've heard about it before. All of Grandma May's daughters-in-law have had 3 sons each, so her wish remains unfulfilled, and the $500 million still sits unclaimed. Elisa kept her gaze on her cousin, making it clear she was sending a message. Serenity was taken aback by the revelation. She couldn't help but feel that she might be in the wrong business. Why bother setting up her own business when she could just give Zachary children and amass wealth through childbirth? Jasmine, meanwhile, was amazed at the amount of money involved. It was a significant sum, and the idea of push presents was foreign to her. Jasmine commented with a playful smile, Saren, it seems like you can become wealthy by having children. Elisa, observing Jasmine's charm bracelet, shifted the conversation, saying, Jasmine, you don't need to envy Saren. Your future mother-in-law gave you a family heirloom. I thought I was seeing things, but upon closer inspection, I'm certain this is the Buchan's family heirloom. Jasmine was stunned. She had received an expensive gift from Mrs. Buchan, but she hadn't realized it was such a significant family item. She inquired, the Buchan's family heirloom. How can you tell? Elisa explained, my mother introduced me to the ladies of the Buchan family, and I often saw Mrs. Buchan wearing a charm bracelet. The family's first lady has a more valuable one. Mrs. Buchan mentioned that it's their family heirloom, passed down to the wife of the oldest son. Is Josh the oldest son? Jasmine, blushing, replied, no, Julian is the head of the household, and he's older. Elisa clarified, but they have different mothers, they're just cousins. Jasmine realized, Josh must be the oldest child in his family then. Elisa teased, so no need to be envious of Saren. Your future in-laws are on par with the Yorks, both of you landed the 2 greatest families in Wiltspoon. Jasmine exchanged a meaningful look with Serenity. They had never realized the significance of Mrs. Buchan's gift. Jasmine decided to leave to confirm this with Josh. Serenity had always mingled with the upper crust thanks to Jasmine, but she now realized that there was an even more affluent class above the one she was accustomed to. Who? She hadn't even known about the Buchan's family heirloom. Elisa decided to leave too, citing the need to be with her friend Cece, who was still feeling down. She explained that moving on after a long-term relationship could be challenging, sharing her own experiences when she discovered Zachary was married. Serenity felt awkward, as she had once thought that Elisa and Mr. York might have a future together. Serenity had never imagined that Mr. York would turn out to be her husband. Saren, it's all in the past. I stopped daydreaming the moment he saw me as his cousin-in-law. He's done a lot for you, but he never did anything for me. He wouldn't even talk to me back then. Elisa had managed to move on from Zachary because it was clear he had no romantic interest in her, his heart belonged to Serenity. Speaking of which, my best friend went through a similar situation as you, but their roles were reversed. She was the one hiding her identity while she was dating her boyfriend. However, he left her for someone wealthy. Apparently, the new girl had money and connections, so he didn't have to work as hard to advance in his career. Serenity replied, she should be relieved that she discovered his true character before they got married. Elisa nodded, that's exactly what I told her. Elisa grabbed her car keys. I got to go, Saren? Do you have time to draft the contract? If not, I can get my brother's secretary to do it for us. I can't be bothered with this. I spent the whole night on the business proposal last time. I'll do it. Serenity took on the responsibility since she could not put everything on Elisa's shoulders. This was an investment project among the three of them. There were certain things she needed to handle herself for the sake of gaining experience. I'll pick you up in the evening for the social event. Sure, Serenity happily answered while walking Elisa out. Once Elisa was gone, she returned to the shop and helped Jasmine with lunch. Not too long later, the students flocked into the shop as school was out. The pair paused making lunch and attended to their trade. Liberty came to Serenity's shop with Sunny at noon. She operated a breakfast diner, so she only worked half the day. Still, Liberty was tired from waking up early in the morning. Saren, have you made lunch? Liberty asked, seeing that her sister and Jasmine were occupied. The appetizer is ready. We haven't had time to make toppings for the dish. I'll make them. Liberty told her son to entertain himself behind the cash register while she went into the kitchen to cook. After Serenity was done scanning books for 2 students, and the parent made the payment, Serenity asked, "Where's Mrs. Lane?" She went home to have lunch. Business has been great in the last 2 days. I'll put out a sign to hire tomorrow, Saren. I plan to employ 1 person. That way, Mrs. Lane can come back and help you. Liberty replied as she made her way into the kitchen to cook. Serenity had no problems with her sister's decision to bring someone on board her business. She always believed that her sister would excel in anything she put her mind to. All you can eat would become the best restaurant on the street. Her sister would become the prettiest restaurant owner. Liberty served a portion for her son to start eating when the shop mellowed down. She also helped out until all customers had left the store before they had their lunch together. After lunch, Serenity said, "I need to tell you something, Liberty." Rocking Sunny to sleep, Liberty lifted her chin and looked at her sister before uttering with a smile, "Do tell." "I was stopped in the middle of the road last night, and the car was trashed." "What?" Liberty and Jasmine exclaimed in shock. They asked in unison, "Are you alright?" Serenity assured her sister, saying, "I'm okay. Look at me, all fine. But my car got smashed. Zachary drove me to work this morning." Worried, Liberty inquired, "Who did this? Was it those people again?" She immediately thought of their troublesome relatives. No, it was the Newman family. More specifically, Carrie Newman. "We had a couple of disputes, and she decided to retaliate by hiring goons to go after me." Liberty was furious. "This is unbelievable. Where's the law in all of this? Did you call the police?" "Yes, I did," Serenity confirmed. Serenity glanced at her nephew, held securely in her sister's arms, and continued, "I'll be fine, Liberty. Zachary assigned 2 additional bodyguards to protect me. I just wanted to let you know in case you and Sunny get dragged into this mess." How about moving in with us? It would be safer for all of us, and we can look out for each other. Liberty considered it and replied, I'm living in a pretty safe neighborhood. Since you called the police, I think they've learned their lesson and won't try anything again. We're in a lawful society. After giving it some thought, Liberty added, I've cleared out the storage room in the diner. I plan to get bunk beds and move out of the apartment. Sunny and I can stay in the diner. That way, I can save on rent, and it's safer too. Mr. Lewis had hired security guards to patrol the streets, which made Liberty feel safer. She and Sunny often relied on Serenity for transportation. Serenity reassured her sister, Don't worry, Liberty. They won't do anything openly. I'm just keeping you informed so you can stay vigilant. We can go back to our previous arrangement, like when you were working at Lewis & Company. I can come to your store and pick up Sunny to bring him to mine. Mrs. Lane can look after him. It's a win-win, and you won't be too distracted. Sounds good, Liberty agreed, as it was a practical arrangement. With the support of the York and Stone families, the sisters were no longer vulnerable. Anyone trying to harm them would need to think twice. Serenity's biggest concern was Sunny's safety. Managing the diner could be hectic, and it was challenging for her to look after Sunny while working. Once their living arrangements were settled, Serenity shared with her sister the rumors their relatives were spreading about their parents' inheritance. Liberty wasn't surprised, she had expected their relatives to fight for their parents' legacy. Serenity reassured her sister, I can handle this, Liberty. You should go back and get some rest. Yawning, Liberty said, Sure. I'll leave the e-bike at your shop and take a cab home with Sunny. I'm so exhausted, I can hardly keep my eyes open. Serenity understood her sister's fatigue and instructed one of the bodyguards to drive them home safely. In the afternoon, Serenity attended an event with her aunt. This time, they were going to the Jeffersons' home. Around 9 o'clock, the arrival of several luxurious sedans caught the attention of the guests at the Jeffersons' party. Mr. York had arrived to pick up his wife, and his presence turned heads. Holding a bouquet of roses, he exuded charm and left everyone captivated. As he stepped out of his elegant Rolls-Royce, people couldn't help but be in awe of him. Mr. York greeted Mr. Jefferson with a nod. Before any introductions could be made, he explained, I apologize for the interruption, Mr. Jefferson. I've come to pick up my wife. It's getting late. Everyone was left speechless. The party had only started at 7:30, with 2 more hours to go before the event would conclude. However, Zachary had come to take his wife home. Mr. Jefferson greeted him with a warm smile and said, It's a pleasure to have you here, Mr. York. We're celebrating my mother's 80th birthday. Would you honor us with your presence at the party? Without directly answering Mr. Jefferson, Zachary quietly called, Jim. Jim stepped forward, holding a gift in his hands. Zachary spoke in a low voice, I apologize for the interruption. This is a small gift for the birthday celebrant. I wish her nothing but happiness and a long life. Even though Zachary hadn't attended the celebration, he showed utmost respect by preparing a gift for old Mrs. Jefferson. Jim handed the present to Mr. Jefferson, who thanked Zachary profusely. Zachary stood there, looking rather dashing under the night lights, holding the bouquet of roses. Observing that Zachary had no intentions of entering the party, Mr. Jefferson didn't insist and instructed a maid to fetch Serenity. However, Zachary's arrival had already caused quite a stir. Serenity, who had been quietly enjoying her meal in a corner, was startled. Realizing that Zachary was here, she put down her utensils and informed Elisa that she would find out what was happening. "Zachary," she called out as she came out of her corner. However, she had to refrain from running towards him, considering she was wearing stiletto heels. Zachary's eyes were fixed on her. He couldn't help but smile when he saw her. Despite his composed demeanor in front of Mr. Jefferson and the others, his tense facial muscles softened into a smile as soon as he laid eyes on Serenity. "Seren," he said warmly. Approaching her, Zachary offered her the bouquet of roses and said tenderly, "I had these flowers bought from Spring Blossoms." Serenity was pleased to hear that Zachary supported Camryn's business. Accepting the bouquet, she asked, "Why are you here?" With the bouquet in her hands, Zachary replied in a husky voice, "I'm here to take you home." Serenity lifted her chin slightly as she gazed at him and smiled, saying, "It's still early. It's only 9 o'clock. Zachary said nothing but continued to gaze deeply into her eyes. Serenity blinked, remembering the promise she had made to him. She was left speechless. "I need to let Aunt Audrey and Elisa know," she finally said, realizing she needed to keep her promise. With a determined look, he held her hand and led her towards the car. "We can leave the message with Mr. Jefferson. He'll pass it on to your aunt and cousin." Serenity stared at him, both amused and lost for words. She had whispered a promise in his ear just the other day, and now he had come early to pick her up from the Jeffersons' residence. Serenity couldn't help but hope she'd be able to wake up on time for work tomorrow. As they prepared to leave, Zachary addressed Mr. Jefferson. "We're heading off, Mr. Jefferson. Please inform Mrs. Stone that I'm taking Seren home." "All right." The person who answered was Mrs. Stone. Mrs. Stone and a few ladies were standing not too far away as they watched the scene unfold. "I got to go, Aunt Audrey." Mrs. Stone showed understanding, nodding her head with a smile. Serenity felt embarrassed. It was a shame that her man was shameless. As the public watched on, he led her into the car and shut the door, stopping the people from prying further. Mrs. Stone and the other lady stood at the entrance of the Jeffersons' residence, watching as the familiar Rolls-Royce drove away. "Mrs. Stone, Mr. York is really wonderful to your niece. We're only halfway through the party, and he's here to take her home," one of the ladies commented. Mrs. Stone replied with a smile, "Zachary is indeed very good to Seren, so much so that even us old folks are a tad envious." Another lady chimed in, "When are Mr. York and your niece planning to have their wedding? We'd love to join in the celebration." Mrs. Stone curled her lips into a knowing smile and answered, "My elder niece, my husband, and I visited Wildridge Manor just 2 days ago to discuss the wedding. We've set a date for early fall, so it's only a few months away. You're all invited, of course. Don't forget to bring a gift." The ladies nodded with smiles, appreciating the honor of being invited by the prestigious York family. Nobody wanted to miss the opportunity to mingle with the Yorks. Intriguingly, some of them had questions about Serenity's relationship with Tanya, since Serenity always attended events with Mrs. Stone and not with her mother-in-law. However, the memory of the fallout from Mrs. Walker's unsolicited opinions about Tanya made these ladies hesitant to inquire further, despite their curiosity. The news of the upcoming wedding was significant, and it was now certain that Serenity would not merely become Mrs. York, she would be the lady of the entire York household. For those with daughters, it was a reminder to ensure their daughters maintained positive interactions with Serenity at social events, even if they couldn't become best friends. The conversations among these women served both to gather the latest news for their husbands and to form connections with those who might be beneficial in the future. Serenity could easily imagine the chatter about her early departure from the event, but she didn't dwell on it. She had no need to concern herself with others' opinions. As they sat in the car, Zachary asked, "You left at 9. The party was only halfway done." Serenity met his intense gaze and replied, "I didn't look at the time. I just felt like I'd been there for a long while, so I decided to leave." Zachary's expression remained enigmatic. "Did you have enough to eat?" He knew Serenity had a passion for good food. Apart from socializing and making friends, one of the main reasons she attended social events was to sample gourmet dishes. Zachary's mind drifted back to the early days of their marriage. Serenity had attended a party with Jasmine at the Wildspoon Hotel, where the two of them had tucked into a sumptuous feast in a quiet corner, seemingly oblivious to the grand entrance he had made. Later, when she returned home, she had eagerly shared gossip about him, speculating about his virility or preferences in the bedroom. Despite the mixed emotions he'd experienced at the time, Zachary hadn't been able to defend himself effectively. "I could have eaten more," Serenity confessed, lowering her head to take in the fragrant scent of the roses. She then asked playfully, "Did you go to Spring Blossoms? Do you think Camryn is truly blind, or is she pretending?" "I didn't personally go there. I had someone buy the flowers for me," Zachary admitted. "Callum should have been the one to visit. As her future brother-in-law, I should minimize my interactions with her." Serenity tilted her head to look at him and teased, "It's not like I'd be jealous or anything." "I know," Zachary replied with a hint of sulking in his voice. "I can never seem to make you jealous." He often found himself feeling jealous over her, but he couldn't seem to provoke the same emotions in her. Despite their reconciliation and progress in their relationship, Zachary believed that Serenity wasn't passionately in love with him. She always maintained a clear-headed perspective on things. Naturally, Zachary wouldn't go to great lengths to make Serenity jealous if it were effortless for her to make him swoon. His mind drifted back to a conversation he had with Mrs. Lane. He cherished the person Serenity had grown to be. She wouldn't be the woman he fell in love with if she changed, and he adored her for that very reason. That was just who she was, part of her unique personality. "I don't really have a love rival," Serenity said matter-of-factly. "I'd only get jealous if there was a formidable rival out there vying for your attention. I'd worry that someone might steal you away from me. I mean, I'm not that great, am I?" Serenity's tone was straightforward. She had no competitors in love. While it was true that there were many women who coveted Zachary, they never mustered the courage to confess their feelings to him. Besides, Serenity had never met these women, nor had there ever been any catfights. Her love life had been smooth sailing, with her monopolizing all of Zachary's affection. He gave her his whole heart. With these thoughts in mind, Serenity considered herself incredibly fortunate. She had a man who loved her wholeheartedly, and she was grateful for it. She felt like she could laugh in her sleep, knowing she was the recipient of the affection of such an extraordinary man. Zachary lovingly held her and teased, "Would you be nervous if I had someone challenge you for my affection?" Serenity grinned and replied, "You better not try that. If someone were to come to me and say, 'Serenity, Zachary belongs to me,' how much would it take for you to leave him?" "Then I'd name a price and sell you out. I could live a pretty comfortable life with that money. Ha ha ha." The chauffeur and Jim, who were discreetly eavesdropping on the conversation, were rendered speechless. It was a precarious subject to broach, and they had momentarily considered stopping the car and seeking cover. But in the end, they lacked the courage to do so. Jim fervently wished he could become invisible, while the chauffeur silently prayed for the conversation to end soon. However, they both remained firmly present. Just when they thought their boss would explode in anger, Zachary did the opposite. Instead of reprimanding Serenity, he scowled briefly and then gently grabbed the back of her head, pressing his lips to hers. It was an intimate kiss that conveyed his emotions more effectively than words ever could. "No one has ever dared to sell me out, Serenity. Don't even think about it." Serenity flashed a mischievous grin. "I was just kidding. It takes two to tango, after all. Your admirers wouldn't even get close to you unless you allowed them. Similarly, you'd have to be interested in other women to entertain them. But I trust you," she continued. "You're a straightforward guy who isn't exactly known for charming the ladies. Besides, you didn't fall head over heels for Elisa. I guess you thought it was a waste of your time to pursue other heiresses." To Serenity, Elisa was an exceptional woman, and she believed that Zachary and Elisa would have made a great couple if she hadn't entered the picture. Playfully pinching her cheek, Zachary said tenderly, "My heart has limited space. I already have you, and I need to fatten you up so you'll be snugly nestled inside. If you can't get out, no one else can come in. In this lifetime, you can only be my wife." Serenity responded earnestly, "My heart isn't that expansive either to accommodate another person. You're a big presence, and you're blocking anyone else from entering." Zachary laughed affectionately. She might not love him with the same intensity, but her love was pure and unparalleled. Serenity had turned down Sean's affections in the past. She often mentioned him when she was oblivious to his feelings, as she had always seen him as a brother. However, the moment she learned of his romantic intentions, Sean became a thing of the past in their relationship. "Where are we headed?" Serenity asked as the couple shared a romantic moment, realizing that they were not en route to Brenfield. "To the villa on the hilltop," Zachary replied. Serenity's response was a simple, "Oh." Zachary couldn't help but watch her carefully, anxious that she might not be pleased with the destination. The villa on the hilltop held memories for Serenity, and not all of them were pleasant. After revealing his true identity, Zachary had held Serenity at the estate for 2 days, terrified of losing her. It took the intervention of others to convince him to let her go. Ever since that day, Serenity had never returned to the villa. "Seren, we don't have to go if you don't want to. The driver can take us back to Brenfield," Zachary offered, his voice tinged with concern. He added softly, "Nana is still in Brenfield." Serenity responded, "We can go to the villa on the hilltop. No need to change our plans." Zachary seemed relieved that she didn't object to revisiting the villa. He was more accustomed to living at the estate since he had spent several years there, whereas his residence in Brenfield had only been for a few months. "Did Mrs. Newman try to contact you?" Zachary suddenly inquired. Mr. Newman had rushed back to Wilkespoon upon learning that Carrie had been detained. He was furious when he heard the entire story from his wife, nearly losing his composure. He could not believe his daughter would come up with such a thing. It had to be a foolproof plan if Carrie wanted to go up against Serenity. At least, Carrie must make sure the evidence would not be traced back to her before making her move. The stunt Carrie pulled was flawed, to say the least. She even made personal contact with the thugs. Mrs. Newman knew that her daughter acted recklessly. However, she only found out after the deed was done. It was too late to stop Carrie. It never crossed Mrs. Newman's mind that Serenity could fight. These thugs did not even leave a scratch on her. Besides, Zachary had hired bodyguards to protect Serenity in the shadows. Had Mrs. Newman known that her daughter would act on impulse, she would have stopped her. It was what it was. Plus, Serenity had proof. Despite Mrs. Newman's heartache and desperation to save her daughter, she could do nothing. Mrs. Newman might have easily resolved everything if it had been a run-of-the-mill situation. However, their target was no ordinary person, it was Mrs. York. Serenity replied, "No. Did Mr. Newman come looking for you?" Mr. Newman came to apologize again, but I declined to meet with him. I instructed Callum to handle it. Zachary sympathized with Callum, who would inevitably have to engage with the Newmans soon. Serenity had a firm stance on the matter. I wouldn't be inclined to forgive Carrie, even if Mrs. Newman approached me. Being kind to the enemy would be cruel to myself. The feud between Carrie and me has reached a point of no return. Serenity's alignment with Camryn further solidified her stance. There's no need to reconcile with her. She's spoiled and expects to have her way in everything. She'll bear a grudge, even if you forgive her, and seek revenge whenever she can. There's no point trying to mend things with someone who believes they're always right. Zachary asserted his protective side. "Don't worry, Seren. You have me. I won't let anyone mistreat my wife. You don't have to fear or appease anyone." Serenity smiled and replied, "Even if I weren't your wife, I have my principles. Why should I yield when I've done nothing wrong? If she can harm me, she can do the same to others. I've turned to the law to hold her accountable. While it may not change her attitude, it may serve as a lesson to prevent her from toying with people's lives." With a serious expression, she added, "I just hope you don't think I'm overstepping my boundaries and causing you problems." Zachary playfully nuzzled her. "I don't think so. I'm more than happy to clean up after you and take away your problems for a lifetime." Serenity quipped, "You make it sound like I constantly get myself into trouble." Zachary chuckled. Serenity then broached a sensitive topic. "I need to discuss something with you. My grandparents have been spreading rumors in my hometown, claiming that my father isn't their biological son. They say they found him somewhere and raised him. According to them, my dad should be grateful they raised him, but he passed away before he could repay them, so they deserve his inheritance." Zachary inquired, "Do you want assistance in investigating whether your father is their biological son?" Serenity expressed her unwavering belief in her father's lineage. "I have no doubt that my dad is their son. He bears an uncanny resemblance to my grandfather, and the only logical explanation for this is their blood relation." She remained skeptical of her grandparents' claims. "I might believe them if they insisted on a DNA test to prove we're not related. Otherwise, it all seems like a fabricated story." Zachary paused before saying, "One can never be too certain about such matters. Sometimes, people can resemble one another without sharing a biological connection." "Have you heard the news? There's a child who bears a striking resemblance to a wealthy man, but they are not related at all." Serenity argued, "But the townspeople would have known if it were true. Neither my sister nor I have ever heard any rumors about my dad not being their biological son." Zachary shared an example from his own experience. "You might not be aware, but Ben's wife, Jane, was adopted by the Murphy family. The Murphys initially intended the name for their own daughter, but she tragically passed away. They found Ben's wife after their daughter's death and brought her home as a replacement. Since both girls were of the same age, the townspeople had no inkling of the switch. They always believed Ben's wife was the Murphys' biological daughter." Serenity pondered, "Do you think my dad's situation could be similar?" Zachary replied, "It's a possibility worth exploring. They must be exceptionally biased parents if your father turns out to be their biological son. If he isn't, it might explain their behavior. Serenity suggested an easy solution: why go through an investigation? Just ask Noah to come here. I'll do a DNA test with him. We should see some results since we share the same grandfather. Noah always seemed to be the first person who came to Serenity's mind in such situations. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my YouTube channels, the Voice channel, and watch my original creations, as well as my new channel La Novela de Voz showcasing the forbidden love story. Please don't forget to hit all from the notification bell, so you will get notified whenever a new video is uploaded. Thank you.